Welcome to Life Stories, where we explore the inspiring journeys of everyday heroes and the challenges they overcome. Today, we bring you the gripping tale of Angela Brooks, a newly appointed police chief determined to reform her precinct and fight against deep-seated corruption. Her unwavering commitment to justice, empathy, and integrity sets the stage for a transformative battle that will test her strength and resilience. Don't miss out on this powerful story and many more that celebrate courage and perseverance. Subscribe to our channel now to join us and start today's story. Your journey with Life Stories begins here. It was a chilly Thursday morning when Angela Brooks stepped into the downtown precinct. Her heart steady beneath the composed exterior she meticulously maintained. The glass doors of the station shimmered with the first light of dawn, reflecting her determined gaze as she approached the entrance. Her long, chestnut hair was neatly tied back, a subtle nod to the professionalism she embodied. Dressed in a dark blouse and well-fitted jeans, Angela carried an air of quiet confidence that seemed to command respect. Even before anyone realized her true position, the precinct was already bustling with activity, officers moving with purpose, the hum of conversations intertwining with the clatter of keyboards and the distant ring of phones. Angela's footsteps echoed softly against the polished floor as she made her way to the front desk. Her presence initially dismissed as just another concerned citizen seeking assistance. Little did they know, Angela Brooks had recently been appointed as the new chief of police, a role she had earned through years of unwavering dedication and a relentless pursuit of justice. Derek Collins, a burly officer with a perpetual scowl etched onto his face, was stationed behind the front desk. His piercing blue eyes rarely missed a detail. But today, they seemed clouded with irritation as he glanced up from his computer screen. "What do you need?" he barked, his tone dripping with arrogance and impatience. Angela took a deep breath, her voice calm yet firm. "I'm here to report a theft," she replied, her eyes meeting Derek's with unwavering resolve. Derek's gaze swept over her, a mocking smile creeping onto his lips. "Another one. Her," he sneered loudly enough for those nearby to overhear. "Let me guess, a phone or maybe a purse. Those things never turn up again." "Lady." Angela stood her ground, her cheeks flushed slightly from the chill in the air, not from any physical discomfort. "I want to file a report. It's my right," she stated, her voice steady, carrying a weight that seemed to test Derek's patience. Derek's mockery faltered for a split second as Angela's steadfast demeanor pierced through his facade. He rose abruptly, grabbing a steaming cup of coffee from his desk. The room held its breath as he moved closer to her, the scent of the hot liquid filling the space between them. "Listen," he began, his voice lowering to a menacing whisper. "People like you should know their place. We've got more important things to deal with than petty stuff. Got it?" Before Angela could respond, Derek tilted the coffee cup with a swift motion, and the scalding liquid splashed directly into her face. The shock of the hot coffee burned her skin, a physical reminder of the prejudice and abuse of power that permeated the very institution meant to uphold justice. She flinched, stepping back instinctively, one cheek stinging from the heat. Yet her gaze remained unflinching. The atmosphere in the precinct grew oppressively tense, officers stealing uneasy glances her way but daring not to intervene. A young officer, Jason Miller, stood nearby, his fists clenched as if ready to speak up. But Derek's sharp glare silenced any impulse he might have had. Others turned away, feigning busyness, their expressions betraying a shared sense of helplessness. Derek, now composed, returned to his desk as if nothing had transpired. "Now get lost," he muttered, dismissing Angela with a wave of his hand. She wiped the coffee from her face with a trembling hand, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes in the room fixated on her. Pity and helplessness lingered in their gazes, but no one took action to stop Derek. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Angela refused to let Derek see her falter. "Thank you for showing me exactly how things work around here," she said quietly, her voice carrying a note of steely resolve. Without another word, She turned and walked out of the precinct, her footsteps echoing through the silent space as she left behind an environment rife with tension and unspoken conflicts. As Angela made her way down the hallway, the dripping coffee leaving trails on her shirt, she reflected on the encounter. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed to mock her, casting harsh shadows that highlighted the scalded marks on her face. But she neither stopped nor looked back. Derek's words reverberated in her mind not for the insult itself, but for the smugness and contempt of someone who had grown too comfortable wielding unchecked power. At the end of the hallway, Deputy Chief Laura Davis awaited her in the office. Laura was one of the few people Angela trusted implicitly, a steadfast ally in her mission to reform the precinct. "Are you all right, Chief?" Laura asked, her voice soft but filled with genuine concern. "I'm fine," Angela replied, her tone colder than usual. "I assume you heard everything." Laura nodded, her expression heavy with understanding. "I wanted to intervene, but you insisted we not reveal anything about you until you observe things for yourself." Angela loosened her hair tie, allowing her hair to cascade over her shoulder, partially concealing the reddened cheek. "I needed to see it," she admitted, her voice calm but tinged with restrained anger. "I needed to see how this system truly operates when no one knows who I am." Back at her office, Angela stood before a mirror, washing the coffee off her face. The cold water soothed the burning pain but could not dispel her indignation. She took a deep breath, drying her face, her eyes regaining their characteristic sharpness. "I want all officers gathered in the briefing room immediately," she instructed Laura, who stood silently by the door. Minutes later, the precinct was filled with officers, the air thick with anticipation. Derek Collins entered last, his usual air of indifference intact as he took a seat in the far corner of the room. The moment Angela stepped into the room, a heavy silence fell. Initially, no one recognized her, but as she set a leather case on the table and straightened her posture, her authority became unmistakable. "Good morning," Angela began, her voice firm and commanding. "I understand you've had an eventful start to your day. Let me introduce myself. I'm Angela Brooks, and as of today, I am your new chief of police." The room froze for a few seconds, officers exchanging uneasy glances. Derek sat frozen at the far end, his smug grin disappearing, replaced by an expression of discomfort and disbelief. "No way," he muttered loudly enough for Angela to hear. She turned to him, her gaze icy and authoritative. "Oh yes, Derek Collins. I'm very much looking forward to working with you." The officers remained silent, the tension palpable, like a ticking time bomb ready to explode. "I've spent the past 2 weeks observing this precinct," Angela continued, her eyes scanning the room. "I've seen how you operate when you think no one is watching. And let me be blunt, there's a lot that needs to change." Derek swallowed hard, trying to regain his composure. But deep down, he knew the game had shifted. For the first time in years, he felt he might no longer be the one in control. The room remained steeped in heavy silence as Angela concluded her introduction. Officers quietly left the room, leaving Derek alone, his hands gripping the arms of his chair tightly, the anger boiling beneath his calm facade. Jason Miller lingered at the doorway, his eyes darting toward Derek, a sense of injustice stirring within him. He dared not speak, understanding the extent of Derek's influence within the precinct. As the meeting ended, the atmosphere shifted immediately, whispers spreading through the hallways. Some officers wondered who Angela was and how she had earned her position, questioning whether she was truly fit to lead them. Derek maintained his usual smug demeanor, confident that Angela wouldn't survive in this environment for long. But Angela knew better. She understood that change would not come easily, especially from someone like Derek who represented everything she had to fight against. Her journey was just beginning, and she was determined to navigate the challenges ahead with empathy, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to justice. From a young age, Justice was not just a concept to me, it was the very essence of who I aspired to be. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, my grandmother, Evelyn Brooks, was my beacon of hope and strength. She was a relentless social activist, her passion for fairness and equality inspiring everyone around her. Evelyn often said, "Justice isn't something handed to you, you have to fight for it, piece by piece." Those words became the cornerstone of my life, shaping my path and fueling my determination to make a meaningful difference. Evelyn's unwavering commitment to justice was exemplified in her actions. I vividly remember the day she was shoved to the ground by a police officer simply for demanding accountability. The sight of her bruised but unbowed figure ignited a fire within me. It was a painful lesson, but one that solidified my resolve to enter the very system that had wronged her. Determined to reform it from within, I knew that to create lasting change, I had to be part of the machinery, not outside it. After graduating college with a degree in criminal law, I joined the police force. Starting at the bottom, the early days were grueling, long hours, relentless scrutiny, and the ever-present undercurrent of skepticism from my male colleagues. Many dismissed me as a weak woman unfit for the job, a notion that only strengthened my resolve. I worked tirelessly, learning the intricacies of law enforcement, and proving my worth through relentless dedication and integrity. Every case I handled, every injustice I fought against, was a step towards honoring my grandmother's legacy. One person who recognized my potential was Detective Samuel Hayes, a veteran officer respected for his intelligence and extensive knowledge. Samuel became my mentor, guiding me through complex cases and teaching me how to navigate the pressures of the job without compromising my principles. Under his mentorship, I learned not just the technical aspects of policing, but also the importance of empathy and understanding in every interaction. Samuel believed that holding a cool head and maintaining a warm heart were essential for true leadership. Lessons that have stayed with me to this day. However, my journey was not without its shadows. During an internal investigation, I stumbled upon evidence linking Samuel to a series of corrupt activities. Finding his name in documents associated with bribery from organized crime was a devastating blow. Confronting him was one of the hardest moments of my career. Samuel didn't deny the allegations, instead, he warned me about the harsh realities of the system, telling me that compromise was the only way to survive. His admission shattered my trust, transforming him from a mentor into another example of the very corruption I was fighting against. Despite the betrayal, I refused to let it deter me. Instead, it became a painful reminder that I could never compromise my values. No matter the cost, I continued to climb the ranks, driven by the memory of Evelyn and the lessons I had learned from Samuel. Each promotion was hard-earned, a testament to my resilience and unwavering commitment to justice. I was assigned major cases, recognized as one of the most promising officers, and eventually, my dedication culminated in my appointment as Chief of Police. Becoming chief was not just a personal achievement, it was a promise to myself and to Evelyn that I would honor her teachings by transforming the very system that had once oppressed her. I knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Officers like Derek Collins represented everything I had to fight against: abuse of power, corruption, and a culture of fear. But I also knew that true change required empathy, understanding, and the courage to stand firm in the face of adversity. As I settled into my new role, I carried with me the profound lessons learned from my past. I understood that leadership was not about wielding authority but about inspiring trust and fostering a sense of community within the force. My journey had taught me that love and empathy were just as crucial as strength and determination in the fight for justice. With each decision I made, I aimed to rebuild trust, not just within the police department, but also with the community we served. Reflecting on my rise to power, I realized that every hardship, every moment of doubt, had prepared me for this role. The challenges I faced had deepened my empathy and strengthened my resolve. I was no longer just an officer, I was a leader committed to creating a just and trustworthy police force. The legacy of my grandmother lived on in every action I took, guiding me as I navigated the complexities of my position and the battle against the ingrained corruption that threatened to undermine everything I stood for. Derek Collins had always been a towering figure in the precinct, both literally and figuratively. His broad shoulders and imposing stature commanded attention the moment he walked into a room. But beneath that formidable exterior lay a man whose heart had grown cold, hardened by years of unaddressed grief and unchecked power. Derek's transformation began long before Angela Brooks took her first steps into the precinct. Once, he had been the idealistic rookie, full of hope and determination to make a difference. His parents' tragic deaths during a robbery had left an indelible mark on him. The perpetrators were never caught, and the lack of closure shattered his faith in the justice system. What was once a beacon of hope became a source of deep-seated bitterness. As the years passed, Derek's disillusionment festered. He watched as officers he respected compromised their integrity, bending the rules to serve their own ends. Instead of fighting against the corruption, Derek chose to embrace it, believing that only through absolute control could he protect himself and maintain order. He began leveraging his authority to dominate the precinct, fostering a culture of fear where dissent was met with intimidation and silence. Derek's methods were subtle yet insidious. He manipulated younger officers, exploiting their fears and insecurities to secure their loyalty. Jason Miller, a fresh-faced officer with a strong sense of justice, often found himself caught in Derek's web. Derek saw Jason's idealism as both a threat and an opportunity. By mentoring him, Derek ensured that Jason's ambitions were aligned with his own, steering him away from any notions of rebellion. The once vibrant precinct had become a place where fear overshadowed camaraderie. Officers walked on eggshells, wary of crossing Derek or facing his wrath. The camaraderie that should have defined their daily interactions was replaced by a palpable tension, each officer guarding their own secrets to avoid becoming targets. Derek thrived in this environment, his power unchallenged, his influence unopposed. But power has a way of isolating those who wield it without restraint. Derek's relationships outside the precinct had withered, his pursuit of control leaving little room for genuine connections. The love and empathy that once defined him were buried beneath layers of arrogance and resentment. He had convinced himself that his actions were necessary, that the ends justified the means. But deep down, a lingering sadness gnawed at him, a reminder of the man he once was. One evening, as Derek sat alone in his office, the weight of his actions pressed heavily upon him. The walls, adorned with commendations and accolades, seemed to mock him, each one a testament to a career built on manipulation and deceit. He stared at the photographs of his parents, their smiles a stark contrast to the bitterness he now embodied. In that quiet moment, a flicker of regret passed through him, a brief glimpse of the idealistic officer he used to be. But the moment was fleeting, swallowed by the darkness that had taken root in his soul. Derek's downfall was not imminent yet, but the seeds of his corruption had firmly taken hold. He was a master of maintaining his facade, ensuring that his true nature remained hidden beneath a veneer of authority. Yet, the more he clung to his power, the more vulnerable he became to the very change he sought to suppress. Angela Brooks' arrival was the catalyst that would expose the cracks in his carefully constructed empire, forcing him to confront the man he had become. As Angela began to implement her reforms, Derek felt his grip on the precinct loosening. The culture of fear he had meticulously cultivated was being dismantled, replaced by transparency and accountability. For the first time in years, Derek faced the possibility of losing everything he had built. The realization was both terrifying and humbling, stirring emotions he had long buried: fear, uncertainty, and a faint glimmer of the justice he once believed in. In those moments of vulnerability, Derek was forced to reflect on his choices. The man he had become was a far cry from the officer who had dreamed of making a difference. The path he had chosen led him away from love and empathy, towards a hollow existence defined by power and control. As Angela's influence grew, Derek stood at a crossroads, the lessons of his past colliding with the reality of his present, setting the stage for a confrontation that would determine not only the future of the precinct but also his own redemption or further descent into darkness. The days following Angela Brooks' official introduction as chief of police were a whirlwind of activity and anticipation. Angela knew that words alone would not suffice to transform the deeply entrenched culture of the precinct. She needed to act decisively, implementing reforms that would lay the foundation for a more transparent and ethical department. Her vision was clear: to foster an environment where justice prevailed over personal agendas, and where every officer felt valued and accountable. Angela convened a series of meetings with her key team members, including Deputy Chief Laura Davis and Officer Jason Miller. Together, they meticulously crafted a comprehensive reform plan that addressed the most pressing issues within the precinct. Mandatory ethics training was at the forefront, designed to instill a sense of integrity and responsibility in every officer. Additionally, Angela introduced a restructured process for handling citizen complaints, ensuring that grievances were addressed promptly and fairly. Perhaps most importantly, she established an independent internal oversight unit, dedicated to investigating any misconduct without bias or favoritism. As Angela began to roll out these changes, the precinct buzzed with a mix of hope and apprehension. Many officers welcomed the reforms, eager for a chance to work in a more just and supportive environment. However, not everyone was pleased with the new direction. Derek Collins, whose influence and authority had long been unchallenged, viewed Angela's initiatives as direct threats to his established power. Derek's initial resistance was subtle but palpable. In private conversations with his loyal subordinates, he expressed skepticism about the necessity and effectiveness of the reforms. These changes are unnecessary, he would argue, his voice laced with disdain. We've been doing things this way for years, and it's worked just fine. But Angela was not one to be easily deterred. She understood that true leadership required not only implementing change but also managing the emotional landscape of her team. She approached Derek with empathy, seeking to understand the roots of his resistance. During a one-on-one meeting, Angela spoke candidly about her vision and the importance of fostering a culture of accountability. "Derek," she began, her voice gentle yet firm, "I respect your experience and dedication to this precinct. These reforms are not about undermining your authority but about ensuring that we all uphold the highest standards of integrity." Derek listened, but his expression remained guarded. Deep down, he felt threatened by the shift in power dynamics. The reforms threatened the very foundation of his authority, making him vulnerable to scrutiny and accountability. Unable to accept Angela's intentions, Derek began to devise a plan to undermine her credibility. His first move was to orchestrate a smear campaign, subtly spreading doubt about Angela's competence and motivations. Derek leveraged his long-standing relationships within the precinct and the community, carefully crafting narratives that painted Angela as an inexperienced and overzealous leader. He whispered doubts during informal gatherings, ensuring that his messages were heard by those who might be swayed by his influence. The emotional toll on Angela was significant. She had dedicated her life to justice and integrity, inspired by her grandmother's unwavering commitment. Facing resistance from someone she had hoped to mentor and respect was disheartening. Yet, Angela refused to let despair take hold. Instead, she drew strength from her own experiences of overcoming adversity and the profound lessons she had learned about resilience and empathy. One evening, as Angela reflected on the mounting challenges, she found solace in a quiet moment alone. She gazed out of her office window, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, and thought of Evelyn's words, "Justice isn't something you wait for, you have to fight for it. Even if you have to fight alone." Those words echoed in her heart, reaffirming her commitment to persevere despite the obstacles. Angela reached out to her team, fostering open communication and encouraging officers to voice their concerns and ideas. She believed that true reform required collective effort and that every individual had a role to play in shaping a better future for the precinct. Her approach was rooted in love and empathy, understanding that change could be unsettling and that support was essential during this transition. As the weeks progressed, the precinct began to feel the impact of Angela's reforms. Officers who had once felt disillusioned found renewed purpose, inspired by the opportunity to contribute to a more just and transparent environment. However, Derek's influence still lingered, casting shadows over Angela's efforts. The battle between reform and resistance was just beginning, and Angela knew that the path to true transformation would require unwavering dedication, empathy, and the courage to confront the very systems that threatened to uphold corruption. The days following Angela Brooks' implementation of the reforms were filled with a cautious optimism. Officers who had once been skeptical began to see the potential for positive change, their weary eyes reflecting a glimmer of hope. Yet, amidst this newfound spirit, a dark undercurrent began to stir. Derek Collins's insidious smear campaign against Angela was gaining momentum, threatening to unravel everything she had worked so hard to establish. It started subtly, with whispered doubts and skeptical glances exchanged during brief moments of downtime. Derek, ever the master manipulator, carefully crafted narratives that painted Angela as an inexperienced and overzealous leader. He would casually mention minor oversights or question her decisions, ensuring that his remarks were heard by those who might be vulnerable to his influence. At first, it felt like mere office gossip, easily dismissed. But slowly, the seeds of doubt began to take root. One afternoon, as I walked through the precinct, I overheard a group of officers discussing Angela's latest directive. "Do you really think she's capable of handling this?" one of them asked, his tone tinged with uncertainty. Another officer nodded, adding, "I've heard she struggled with that case a few years back. Maybe she's not the right fit after all." The sting of those words was sharp, a reminder of the fragile trust Angela was trying to build. Angela sensed the shifting tides. Her eyes, usually so steadfast, now bore the weight of the growing resistance. She understood that Derek's campaign was not just about undermining her authority, it was a calculated move to preserve his own power and control over the precinct. The emotional toll on her was evident, but her resolve remained unbroken. She knew that true leadership required not only strength but also the capacity to inspire and uplift those around her. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Angela invited me to join her for a quiet moment in her office. The city lights outside cast a warm glow, a stark contrast to the cold tension within the precinct. "It's getting harder every day," she confessed, her voice tinged with frustration and exhaustion. "Derek is relentless. He's spreading misinformation, and it's affecting how the community views us." I could see the pain in her eyes, the same determination that had driven her to reform the system now battling against the very person she hoped to mentor and respect. "You're not alone in this," I reassured her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We believe in what you're doing. We'll find a way to counteract his influence." Angela sighed, a mixture of relief and lingering worry evident in her expression. "I just want to ensure that the reforms stick, that we create a precinct built on trust and integrity." But with Derek's tactics, it's like fighting an invisible enemy. The next morning, the public backlash became impossible to ignore. Local news outlets began to feature stories questioning Angela's competence, fueled by the fabricated evidence Derek had carefully orchestrated. Headlines screamed accusations of her mismanagement and alleged cover-ups, painting her as a tyrant rather than a reformer. The community's trust wavered, and protests erupted outside the precinct, demanding Angela's resignation and questioning the integrity of the entire police force. The sight of angry citizens holding signs and chanting for justice was a stark reminder of the delicate balance Angela was striving to maintain. Her heart ached at the thought of losing the support she had worked so hard to earn. But she knew that retreating was not an option. She had committed herself to this cause, to the memory of her grandmother Evelyn and the belief that true justice could prevail through perseverance and empathy. In those moments of crisis, Angela drew strength from the very principles that had guided her journey. She reached out to trusted allies within the precinct, rallying them to stand firm against the tide of misinformation. Together, they strategized ways to restore the community's faith, emphasizing transparency and accountability in every action they took. Angela's unwavering commitment became a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of resilience in the face of adversity. As the protests continued and the media scrutiny intensified, Angela remained steadfast. She understood that rebuilding trust would take time and that the path to justice was fraught with challenges. Yet, her belief in the possibility of meaningful change never wavered. She embodied the very essence of the lessons learned from her past: love, empathy, and the unyielding pursuit of what is right. In the heart of the storm, Angela Brooks stood as a pillar of strength, determined to guide her precinct through the darkness towards a brighter, more just future. The weight of the public backlash pressed heavily on my shoulders as I navigated the tumultuous waters of reforming the precinct. Every headline, every protest sign seemed to echo Derek Collins's relentless efforts to dismantle the foundation I was striving to build. Yet, amidst the chaos, I knew that the path to true justice required unwavering determination and the courage to seek the truth, no matter how obscured it might be. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves painted the city in hues of gold and crimson, I convened a confidential meeting with Officer Jason Miller and Deputy Chief Laura Davis. The gravity of our situation was palpable, the air thick with anticipation and the silent understanding that what we were about to undertake could change everything. "Jason, Laura," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We need to initiate an internal investigation to uncover the full extent of Derek's corruption. It's the only way to restore trust, both within the precinct and with the community." Laura, with her calm demeanor and sharp intellect, nodded thoughtfully. "I agree, Chief. We need to approach this meticulously. Derek is well entrenched, and any misstep could jeopardize everything we've worked for." Jason, younger but equally resolute, added, "I've noticed discrepancies in some of the case files Derek handled. There are patterns that don't add up: missing evidence, unexplained delays. I think we're onto something." The decision was made, and the wheels of our investigation began to turn. We started by reviewing past cases Derek had overseen, meticulously cross-referencing evidence and timelines. The deeper we delved, the more unsettling the findings became. It was clear that Derek had been manipulating cases to protect his allies and further his own agenda, creating a network of corruption that spanned far beyond his immediate circle. Late nights became our norm, the precinct's fluorescent lights burning the midnight oil as we pieced together the puzzle. The emotional toll was immense. Each discovery of wrongdoing felt like a personal betrayal, not just to the victims but to the very principles that had driven me to lead this force. Yet, amidst the frustration and exhaustion, there was a profound sense of purpose that kept us going. One evening, as I sat alone in my office, the city skyline shimmering through the large windows, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. Evelyn's words resonated deeply within me: "Justice isn't something you wait for, you have to fight for it." Piece by piece, each revelation during our investigation was a testament to that truth, reinforcing my belief that change, though arduous, was attainable. Our breakthrough came when we uncovered a series of financial transactions that linked Derek to several illicit activities. These transactions were meticulously hidden, but our persistent efforts had unveiled the truth. With concrete evidence in hand, we prepared to present our findings to the Internal Oversight Unit, ensuring that every detail was accounted for and beyond reproach. The day we were to present our report, the precinct felt unusually silent. Officers who had once been swayed by Derek's influence now looked to us with a mixture of hope and apprehension. As we stood before the Internal Oversight Committee, the weight of our discovery bore down on us. But so did the unwavering support of those who believed in the cause. Here are the findings. I began, my voice steady and resolute. These documents clearly illustrate Derek Collins's involvement in corrupt activities, including bribery, evidence tampering, and the manipulation of case outcomes to protect his allies. The room fell into a hushed silence as the committee members reviewed the evidence. The implications were profound, and the reality of Derek's betrayal was undeniable. As the committee adjourned, the sense of accomplishment was tempered by the knowledge that the battle was far from over. Exposing Derek was only the beginning of dismantling the pervasive corruption that had taken root within our precinct. That night, as I walked through the precinct, I felt a shift in the air. Officers who had once been silenced by fear now spoke with newfound confidence, their voices carrying the promise of change. Jason approached me, his eyes reflecting a mix of relief and determination. "Chief, I think we're finally making progress. People are starting to believe in what we're doing." A smile tugged at the corners of my mouth, a rare moment of genuine happiness amidst the storm. "Thank you, Jason. This is just the beginning. But every step forward is a step towards the justice we all deserve." As I looked out over the city, the lights twinkling like distant stars, I felt a deep sense of empathy and connection with those we served and protected. The lessons I had learned from Evelyn and the trials I had faced had taught me that true leadership was not about wielding power, but about inspiring trust and fostering a community built on mutual respect and integrity. The road ahead was still long, but with each passing day, I felt more confident that we were on the right path, guided by the unwavering belief that justice, no matter how elusive, was worth every fight. The tension in the precinct had reached a boiling point. Every corner seemed charged with anticipation, the air thick with unspoken fears and the weight of impending change. After weeks of meticulous investigation, Angela Brooks and her dedicated team had gathered irrefutable evidence against Derek Collins. The moment of truth was finally upon us, a high-stakes press conference that would determine the future of our precinct and, more importantly, our collective integrity. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city, Angela stood in her office, the folder containing the damning evidence clenched firmly in her hands. Her heart pounded with a mixture of anxiety and determination. She had envisioned this moment countless times, yet nothing could fully prepare her for the emotional gravity it now held. Evelyn's words echoed in her mind: "Justice isn't something you wait for, you have to fight for it." Piece by piece, Deputy Chief Laura Davis entered the room quietly, her presence a steadying force. "Are you ready, Chief?" she asked softly, her eyes conveying unwavering support. Angela took a deep breath, drawing strength from the bond she shared with Laura and the rest of her team. "We're ready," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. The press conference was held in the main conference room, transformed into a makeshift stage adorned with the police department's insignia. Reporters from various media outlets filled the room, their cameras and microphones poised to capture every word. Angela stepped to the podium, her demeanor calm and resolute, embodying the very essence of the reforms she had tirelessly championed. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear and authoritative. "Thank you all for being here today. I am Angela Brooks, the newly appointed Chief of Police, and I stand before you to address serious misconduct that has been uncovered within our precinct." The room fell silent, the gravity of her words settling over everyone present. Angela opened the folder, revealing a series of documents and photographs that painted a clear picture of Derek Collins's corruption. Financial records showing bribes, internal memos detailing his collusion with organized crime, and evidence of his manipulation of case outcomes were laid bare for all to see. As part of our commitment to transparency and justice, Angela continued, her eyes meeting those of the reporters and officers alike. "We have conducted a thorough internal investigation. The findings are indisputable. Derek Collins has abused his position of power, engaging in bribery, evidence tampering, and the protection of criminal elements within our community." Derek, who had been sitting at the far end of the room, stood abruptly, his face a mask of disbelief and anger. "This is outrageous," he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. "I've dedicated my life to this force. You can't do this to me." Angela remained composed, her empathy shining through despite the confrontation. "Derek, I understand that this is difficult," she responded calmly. "But justice cannot be swayed by personal allegiance or fear. Our duty is to uphold the law with integrity and honor." At that moment, the Internal Investigative Unit stepped forward, placing Derek under arrest. The reality of his actions was undeniable, and the room held its collective breath as Derek was led away, his defiant glare meeting Angela's unwavering gaze one last time. As the door closed behind him, a profound sense of relief washed over me. The path to justice had been arduous, filled with emotional turmoil and the constant threat of undermining forces. Yet, standing there, witnessing Derek's downfall, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was not just a victory against one man's corruption but a testament to the resilience and unity of our team. The officers who had once been silenced by fear now looked to me with a renewed sense of hope and trust. Jason Miller approached, his eyes reflecting a mix of relief and admiration. "You did it, Chief," he said softly. "You stood up for what's right." I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle comfortably on my shoulders. "This is just the beginning," I replied. "We have much work to do to ensure that our precinct remains a beacon of justice and integrity. Together, we can rebuild trust and create a safer, more honest community." As the media swarmed to capture the aftermath of the press conference, I took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought us here. The lessons learned from Evelyn, the betrayal of Samuel, and the unyielding support of my team had all culminated in this pivotal moment. It was a profound reminder that true leadership is not about wielding power but about fostering an environment where justice and empathy prevail. Walking out of the conference room, the cool night air greeted me, a stark contrast to the heated emotions that had just transpired. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a symbol of the endless possibilities that lay ahead. With Derek Collins behind bars, the precinct stood at the threshold of a new era, one defined by transparency, accountability, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. The aftermath of Derek Collins's arrest marked a significant turning point for our precinct. The air, once thick with tension and fear, now carried a cautious sense of relief. Yet, beneath that relief lay the daunting task of rebuilding the trust that had been eroded by years of corruption and deceit. As Angela Brooks, the newly appointed chief of police, I felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever, knowing that our journey toward genuine reform was far from over. The days that followed Derek's arrest were a whirlwind of activity. Officers who had once been silenced by fear now approached me with a mix of gratitude and newfound hope. Jason Miller, once a symbol of hesitation, now stood as one of our strongest advocates for change. His unwavering support was a beacon of the resilience we all possessed. "Chief," he said one morning, his voice steady, "I think we're finally making progress. People are starting to believe in what we're doing." His words resonated deeply within me. It was a testament to the collective effort we had invested in restoring integrity to our force. Yet, the path ahead was still strewn with challenges. The public's perception of the police force had been tarnished, and rebuilding that trust required more than just arresting a corrupt officer. It demanded a fundamental transformation in how we operated and interacted with the community. I initiated a series of critical reforms aimed at fostering transparency and accountability. Mandatory ethics training became a cornerstone of our strategy, ensuring that every officer understood the importance of integrity in their daily duties. We revamped our complaint handling processes, making them more accessible and responsive to the concerns of the community. Additionally, the establishment of an independent internal oversight unit provided an unbiased mechanism for investigating any future misconduct, reinforcing our commitment to justice. Community engagement became another focal point of our efforts. I organized public forums where citizens could voice their concerns, ask questions, and offer feedback on our initiatives. These meetings were emotionally charged, reflecting the community's pain and desire for meaningful change. One evening, as I stood before a group of concerned residents, a woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "I wasn't sure if I believed in you when you started," she confessed, her voice wavering. "But now, seeing the changes, I do. Thank you for not giving up." Her words were a profound reminder of why I had embarked on this journey. They echoed the teachings of my grandmother Evelyn, who had instilled in me the belief that justice was a relentless pursuit, not a passive hope. Every act of empathy, every decision made with integrity, was a step toward honoring her legacy and the countless others who had suffered under systemic corruption. Internally, the precinct began to transform as well. Officers who had once been wary of the changes now embraced them, recognizing the benefits of a transparent and accountable system. Morale improved, and a sense of camaraderie replaced the culture of fear that had long plagued our force. Jason's transformation from a hesitant officer to a vocal supporter was emblematic of the broader shift taking place. "We're not just enforcing the law," he remarked during one of our team meetings. "We're embodying the very principles of justice and trust." Despite the progress, I remained acutely aware of the lingering challenges. The public's trust needed continual nurturing, and the remnants of Derek's influence still lingered in subtle ways. Some officers resisted the changes, clinging to old habits and fears of losing their grip on power. It required constant vigilance and compassionate leadership to guide them through the transition, ensuring that no one felt abandoned or judged. One night, as I sat alone in my office, I reflected on the profound lessons life had taught me. The journey was not just about reforming a police force, it was about fostering a community built on mutual respect and unwavering trust. Love and empathy had become the bedrock of our efforts, transforming not only our professional environment but also the very fabric of our interactions with the community. The road ahead was undeniably long, but with each passing day, I felt more confident in our ability to create lasting change. The support of dedicated officers like Jason, the resilience of the community, and the enduring lessons of my past fueled my determination. Together, we were not just rebuilding a precinct, we were redefining what it meant to serve and protect with honor and integrity. As I looked out over the city from my office window, the lights twinkling like stars in the night sky, I felt a profound sense of hope. The journey was far from over, but with every act of justice and every gesture of empathy, we were forging a path toward a brighter, more just future. Evelyn's words echoed in my heart. Justice isn't something you wait for, you have to fight for it. Even if you have to fight alone. But now, I no longer had to fight alone. We were united in our mission, bound by a shared commitment to justice and the unwavering belief that together, we could make a difference.